And here we go. So again, thank you very much, Lucy. Thank you very much, Francesco. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for organizing this despite all the COVID situation and everything. So my name is Martin, and today I'm here to talk about two of my favorite topics, which are Android and GraphQL. So I've been working on Android for something like 10 years now. I started with Cupcake, so it was a long time ago. And I dived into GraphQL in 2017, first as a user for a company called Dailymotion that was heavily using GraphQL. And 2017 were more or less the beginning, the early days of GraphQL. And so I began contributing to the repo, and I've been a maintainer of the repo for the Apollo Android repo for something like 1 year now. And I'm very pleased because it's the second week I'm working full-time on Apollo Android. I actually joined Apollo last week to work full-time on Android, so I'm very excited about this. The agenda for today is it's an introduction to GraphQL. So I'm going to do a little bit of background about GraphQL. What is it? Where does it come from? And then we are going to deep dive on Apollo Android and how to consume GraphQL from your Android app. So this will be a little bit of live code so that you can see how to get kickstarted with a GraphQL in your Android app. Lastly, I will talk about the next steps and what's coming for GraphQL. Like Lucy said, if you have any question, you can go to the Slido. I will try to read the chat from time to time, but it's on my phone next to the screen, so I'm not sure I will be able to read everything. So Slido is better. There's also a small poll there. If you could fill it, that would give great insight about how you use GraphQL in your current life today. So back to the beginnings. So GraphQL started in 2012. So it started with Facebook. Facebook in 2012 was mostly, for the most part, still a desktop company. So you were consulting Facebook either on your desktop or your laptop, but it was a big screen. So you had a feed, and it would work with something like this. So this is what I think would be a typical Facebook API in 2012. Let's say it's my feed. I love cat. I love doing homemade bread. So I post things about my cat and also things about stuff I try at home, new recipes and stuff. Maybe there are some ads because it's Facebook, so there might be some ads. And this is all like traditional REST, JSON, you endpoint, you get a single feed endpoint and you get all the data you need. We've all done that. It works really, really well. But as soon as you start having more formats, you end up adding more and more endpoints. And this is what happened to Facebook in 2012. The company was becoming increasingly mobile, so they started adding some new endpoints for mobile. And then you realize that you also have tablets where you can, well, it's a bit of in between a desktop and a mobile, so you want separate different info there as well. And not even speaking about watches where you have info that is completely different. So Facebook realized that instead of thinking their APIs in terms of technical entities and data that the clients would consume, they could just think about it as a product and expose what Facebook is as a graph. So Facebook is a feed. The feed is made of post. Post is made of title, text, thumbnails, large or small. So if you have a big screen, you're going to be requesting most of these fields. If you have a smaller one, well, maybe you want most of these fields, but with a small thumbnail here. You don't want the large thumbnail because that would waste bandwidth and processing memory on your phone, so you want a small thumbnail. And if you have a watch, well, you don't want to display ads on a watch. That would be awkward, so you just query. Really, it's the concept of querying the data, just the data you need. And so there it is. So this is your first GraphQL query. it's maybe a bit like REST. Instead of having a generic endpoint, the client will be able to query exactly the data that it wants. So this here looks like JSON, but it starts with a keyword query, and then it says, I want a feed. Inside a feed, I want every post. For each post, I want the title, text, thumbnail. And you end up with, yeah, some data, title, text, and thumbnail. Exactly what you expected, not more, not less. So really the key driving principles of GraphQL is the client requests the data, so you can really get whatever you need. Second principle is data is strongly typed, so you know what you will get before receiving it. So if you ask for the title of your post, that will be a string, you know that. And the API is introspectable. This is also a very strong point about GraphQL, and we will see later what that means. If we are back to 2012 and Facebook, so Facebook realized it worked really well for them, and they made this successful switch to mobile. And GraphQL, I like to think that GraphQL was some part of it. So they took the project a bit further, and they open sourced it in 2015. And because this is something that could be useful to the community at large, they gave up the specification to the Linux Foundation in 2018. So nowadays, the spec is 100% open source. You can go to this repo, and you can see all the spec. You can also contribute if you want to. A few words about the type system. So it's a very important part of what GraphQL is. The type system is defined with a schema description language, which is, again, this, which also looks like JSON, but it's not really JSON. We call that SDL. And from now on, I will really talk about the GitHub API. I will take the GitHub API example because I don't think Facebook has any public GraphQL API, but GitHub has one, and it's a really big one. And it's a really nice showcase of everything you can do with GraphQL. GitHub has been really, really invested in GraphQL. So this here is a user type on GraphQL, and you can have inside the user type, you can have scalars. So scalars can be, well, you're used to that. If you're a Kotlin developer, you know what a string is, Boolean. If you don't know what is bounty hunter is, it's not important at that point, and we will see later that GraphQL will help you with that as well. Object can contain other objects, and list. And in addition to all that, you also have interfaces, enums, and unions. So it's really, really a fully featured type system. And last but not least, it also has null safety. So if you love Kotlin, you're going to love GraphQL because it's null safe by default. If your field is optional, it's not going to have an exclamation mark in the end. But if you see this small exclamation mark, it means your field will be mandatory and you are guaranteed to have it non-null in the end. But enough talking, and let's see what this GitHub API looks like. So this link here takes me to the GraphQL Explorer of GitHub. This is an instance of what a tool called Graphiql. It's an open source tool, and it allows you to play with your API like you would do with Postman for REST, for an example. So the nice thing with the GitHub GraphQL Explorer is that it comes by default with all the data from the production environment. So you can see here a small disclaimer. You can delete actually your repository. You can do some pretty dangerous stuff there, but you can also do some very powerful stuff. So there's a query that is there by default. I'm just going to hit play. And here you can see that I queried the current viewer and the login, and it's me. So far, so good. We're happy. If we want to query more fields, we have autocomplete. So I can just press Control space here, and I can query whatever fields I want on the user type. So there is a name, and play. You can see my name, small biography. Maybe I want to query the status, like this. Yep, it's all working really well. If I want to get my repositories, I can do that. And I can pass parameters. So parameters are like you would do for like a Kotlin parameter, except it's a column instead of equals. But if I want to get the first 10 parameters, I would just do that. You can even see that there is syntax highlighting and syntax errors. So here, the graphical tool is not happy because I didn't ask for any data in the repository. So if you are not asking any data for this object, well, you might as well leave it out. So it's not use adding it. But I'm just going to add some data here, nodes and ID. And here you go. So ID is not very useful. Maybe I can use something else. Name. Yep. And I have my first 10 repos. So you can really query whatever data you want in your GraphQL API. You can query the whole GitHub graph, sorry, with some limitation, of course. Like if I want to query all my repos, I'm pretty sure I will get an error. So this is for a simple example of error handling. So I get a type describing the error, and well, it's really some details about where this error happened. So it happened on line 14, colon 5, and I can only request up to 500K repos, which is already something. So this was for querying data. Another part of GraphQL is changing data. Changing data in GraphQL is called mutating data. So instead of this query, we will do a small mutation. So I will use a mutation keyword, and I'm going to change my status. So I think it's called change user status. Again, it requires parameters, so I have autocomplete all the way down. It's going to want me to request some data. So I'm just putting something here to make the parser happy. I'm not going to use actually this client mutation ID. It's just an ID that says that everything went well. And I want to say something. What is my status? I'm playing with the GitHub GraphQL Explorer. Before doing that, let's go to GitHub. Let's see my current status. So my current status is what I say. Graphical is really nice, and I'm going to change that. If I hit refresh here. Yeah, so it did work. So it actually worked on production data. So this is pretty cool. So you can do arbitrary mutation, and you can change all data you want like this. Last point that I mentioned, the last principle of GraphQL is that everything was introspectable. And this is a very key point of GraphQL. Introspectable means that your API is self-describing. You can query what type it has directly using the same language you would use to query your data. So every GraphQL endpoint has a single node called schema here that you can query. I'm going to do that. And I can query all the types here. So if I want to list all the types in the GraphQL GitHub schema, I can just do that. And I have them all. So, well, there are lots of them. If I want to see the type of the type, so there's something called kind. No, not kind. Ah, yeah, kind is a string, so it's not nested. And you can query really the types very deeply. This is also what allows GraphQL to display something like this. So earlier I mentioned is bounty hunter. So let's suppose I don't know what is bounty hunter is. I can just control click it, and I have documentation in line. So bounty hunter is whether or not this user is a participant in the GitHub security bug bounty. I'm not too much into security, so I guess the answer will be false, and it is. So really having the documentation in line directly with the tool is really useful, and it makes the GraphQL endpoint self-describing. If I go back to introspection, I can copy-paste this big query. Don't pay too much attention, but this is called an introspection query. And I can copy-paste that here. Okay. Play. And I have the full schema. So this is called an introspection result. I have the full schema of the GitHub graph. So everything that's going to be described by this. You have some nice tooling that's available that allows you to visualize schemas. So if I go there, I can go there, copy paste. Copy paste my introspection result. It's a big one. It's going to take some time to process all these thousands of entities. And maybe someday it will end up displaying something. Yep. So this is the full GitHub schema with all the entities, all the nodes, the whole GitHub product basically is described there. So as you can see, it's pretty huge. So it's more a gimmick, but I like to show that, to showcase that this is really powerful, and it gives you like a real visibility inside the structure of the product that you're using and the API you're using. Back to my slides. So now we've seen how to make your request. We've seen how to make mutations. We've seen that everything is self-documenting thanks to introspection. How do we do this with an Android app? So how do we use GraphQL in an Android app? Well, for this, there's this nice project called Apollo Android, which is open source, which is very badly named because it doesn't require Android at all. It works for every JVM, so it can generate Java and Kotlin models. And really, it gives you in this promise of strong typing. So it can take your schema, it can take the introspection result, and generate strongly typed models that can do everything for you, including the JSON parsing. You also have nice additions, which are HTTP and normalized caching for offline mode, and also bindings for RxJava and coroutines for everything reactive, which we love to do. And really, it works like this. So it takes the schema.json, so the huge files that we've seen earlier, and it takes the queries that you put in some GraphQL files and generates Kotlin model for you. But again, enough talking, and let's demo how it's working. So for this, I made a small demo repo here that you can take a look at. Maybe I haven't, now that I think about it, I might not have pushed everything yet, but I will do it just after this demo. So the goal of this demo will be to make your first GraphQL in an Android app using Apollo Android. So right now we have, I made a skeleton app, a very basic application, Android application, with an empty activity. I wanted to use Compose, but for some reason I got some backend error. So it's still using the traditional views with a constraint layout. Actually, we can run it now. It should be empty. Yep. So yeah, empty activity. If we take a look at the XML layout, it's not much for now. Just I'm going to want to retrieve my first name, last name, status, and my bio from the GitHub API. So what we just did inside Graphical, I'm going to do it in Kotlin. So the first step, as with a lot of libraries, as with a lot of plugins, Gradle plugins, is to add the Apollo plugin to your Gradle file. There you go. I should specify a version, something like this. So this is a plugin. The plugin takes care of generating the source code for you. In addition to the plugin, we are going to need some library. Can you see my screen actually? Can you read, or should I make the text a bit bigger? Let me know in the chat if you want me to make the text a bit bigger. You can read. Perfect. In addition to the plugin, I want a runtime. So the runtime is the code of the library itself. So everything that will be responsible for parsing the JSON, doing the HTTP calls, handling the interfaces. The bulk of Apollo Android is going to be in something called runtime. And the last version is 2.0.3. And since I love Kotlin and I love coroutine, I'm also going to add Apollo coroutines supports, which is not strictly needed for now, but we are going to need it a bit later. I'm going to hit sync, make sure that I didn't do any typo. Studio is working. Okay, so that looks good. And the nice thing is, since we're using build.gradle.kts files, we have autocomplete in the Gradle files as well. So I'm going to tell the Apollo plugin to generate Kotlin models. So I can do that. There are a lot of options in the Apollo Gradle plugin. I don't want to go through all of them. You can add custom types. You can generate model builders for Java. Kotlin, you can specify the new label value type. Well, there are a lot of things. It's all documented in the project. So if you have any question, put them on Slido. I can answer them at the end of the talk. But for now, I'm just going to stick with that. Think again, because I love to think. And we can see that there are now new tasks in my Gradle task. So there are a lot of them. Most of them are mostly duplicates. It's just that, Android has debug plus release and test and main variants. So Apollo is able to generate classes for each variant. Okay, sorry about that. Don't know what happened. So where was I? Yeah, I was describing. Yeah, sorry. I think I got mute. Maybe I did say something stupid. I don't know. It was in prevention of what I was going to say. So I will try to watch what I'm saying. Um, I was just saying and going over all these tasks, and the one that is going to be interesting to us in the first step is this one, the first one, which is download Apollo schema. So it's an helper task to help you downloading the introspection results, so the huge file that we've seen earlier. There's a task bundled with Apollo to do that. So this is done from the command line. This download Apollo schema. I need to pass the endpoint Apollo GraphQL.Apollo.endpoint. I need to say this is I think this is the GraphQL endpoint. So yeah, I forgot to mention, but a GraphQL endpoint, contrary to REST, is just one endpoint. So this is also very useful. This URL here, api.github.com.graphql, this exposes the whole graph of GitHub. You just have to remember that, and you are covered. We also need to tell the plugin where to download the schema. So we are going to put it in main demo droid.com. And we are going to authenticate to the GitHub API because GitHub is authenticated, so I need to pass a token somehow. So I'm going to use authorization headers and say bearer and give it my GitHub token, something like that. Okay, let's hit enter and see what this does. Yep, it's not happy. That's a new one. Rate limiting, interesting. Authenticated, not authenticated. Rate limiting, okay. Well, sorry about that. So we are going to go the old way. Go to the GraphQL Explorer and copy the introspection query from there. And I want to put that here in a GraphQL folder. So I'm adding the schema. Yep, 100K lines, so this is big. Now that I have a schema, and we can go later to see what went wrong there during Q&A. It's the first time I've seen that, but we can look it up afterward if you're curious. Now that I have a schema, I'm also going to write a query. So I'm going to query the current viewer. And since I added to IntelliJ the GraphQL plugin, I should have autocomplete here, but it's not working all the time. Yeah, it's not working. Never mind. So I want name here. I want view. I want status and message. It might start working again. Maybe since I just copy-pasted the schema, the plugin didn't have time to see the schema and autocomplete is not working, but it should start working at some point. But anyway, besides these small little hiccups, I now have a JSON file, a schema.json, and a GraphQL query. So I can just call generate Apollo sources. And in my build folder generated, it should generate a query for me. So this is the generated code by the plugin. You usually don't want to look too much into that because it's quite verbose. There are still some interesting things down there. The first one is the viewer data class. So you can see it was generated. You can see the null safety was there. So everything is optional there. If I were to put login, actually, let me do that. I can do login here. Login is mandatory. So let's add login. And let's go back to the model. So you can see login was added. And it's a mandatory, non-optional string there. All the other ones are optional. Another nice thing is that you have documentation directly accessible. So if you are lost when writing your query, you can just control-click in IntelliJ, and you have the documentation in line. So now we have our generated models. How do we use that? Well, we start with a client. So like retrofit, if you are used to retrofit, we do OK HTTP client dot not OK HTTP Apollo client dot builder dot build. The client needs two things. You need a server URL and it requires a OK HTTP client, which I made this small helper function to make it easier to kickstart. Basically, what this does is it adds an interceptor to add some authentication token. So I hope I will not get this rate limit error again. We'll see that in a while, a few minutes. So now that we have our client, we can do a query, and we can use the generated query directly. Since it has no parameter, it's very easy to use. So traditionally, you would do that. You would call enqueue with an object, Apollo call.callback. And you would implement the callbacks here. So this is the traditional way to do it. You have a callback for failure, you have the callback for success, and you would populate your UI there. But we don't like callback that much because we love coroutines. So instead, I'm going to use something called toDeferred. So it's an extension function that transforms an Apollo call to a coroutine deferred. And I can just call await. So this is much nicer. This is much, much nicer. Obviously, I need some kind of scope. So I'm going to use a lifecycle scope and do that. I also should do some basic error handling, but I'm lazy and we don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to do that. All right. And now I have everything. So if I want to access my viewer object, it's all in the response. There's a root node called data, and then something called viewer. And I can use the good old find view by ID. what was it name? Name here, and same for biography, and same for status. Status is nested, so I'm going to go over there. I think we're good. So let's try to run that. Let's hit play. So if I have a rate limit error, I should crash there. Well, actually, I should crash anyway because I'm in airplane mode. Yeah, it didn't crash, so I was pessimistic. And yes, you can definitely replace with synthetic, where I would suggest you do. If you're not using Compose, which is the next big thing, I would suggest you use view binding, which plays really nice with XML layouts, but synthetic work equally well if you're into that. So it worked. I just wanted to show that it worked well. So you can see I have the stars that I just changed, and I also have my biography, which says in French that I love GraphQL and Android. So that would be me. And that's it. That's more or less it. So you have your first query. We don't have a lot of time, so I wanted to show you how to use the cache. You could also use the cache here and use something like ToFlow. When you use the cache, you get more responses. So you would have to use another extension that is a flow and give you the cache response as well. But yeah, well, this is left as an exercise. If you want to look more into it, I will push everything to the GitHub repo. And the cache would allow you to work offline, so this is really great, and this is a really nice feature of Apollo Android, which I think is somewhat underused. But this is a topic for another talk. So many things to discuss. Back to my slides. So you've seen how to make a simple query. Mutation would work exactly the same, and you've seen it took us like 20 minutes to start from nothing to a completely working GraphQL client using coroutine in an Android app. A few tips. So you've seen I prepared this OKHTTP method. So you will want to leverage the OKHTTP interceptors as much as possible. So if you have a OAuth or something like this, it's very easy to implement authentication in the OKHTTP layers. Persistent queries is another really nice thing. Instead of having your clients send the same queries over and over again, you can just remember them on your server. So you would cache that on your server, and the server would know that this corresponds to this a certain operation ID, and this saves, again, a little bit of bandwidth. And last point that I get a lot of questions about usually is about versioning. So versioning in GraphQL is a bit different from what you would do with your typical REST endpoint. It's I like to describe it fluid. By that I mean, it's very rare that you will see a GraphQL API with version 1, version 2, etc. Instead, the moving. And it's very, very easy to add new fields. It's also very, very hard to remove. And it's completely forbidden to modify types. So please don't modify types, because this is something that a client cannot expect, and this will make your client crash. But the solution to all that is really to have a good monitoring on your backend and know when you want and when you can to remove fields. And actually, it's the same with REST APIs. If you know that an endpoint or a field is not very used anymore, you can take the decision. If you have the good metrics, you can take the decision to remove it. Another nice thing of monitoring your backend is that you can get an idea of how heavy your requests are and how heavy the queries are. As we've seen with the GitHub example, you could have a client requesting like hundreds of megabytes of data from a simple query, and it's something that you might want to limit on the server side. And for all these reasons, monitoring your backend is very, very important. And when it comes to versioning, one last thing I wanted to mention is deprecation. And this has been proved super, super useful for us. It gives a direct line of communication from the backend engineer to the front-end engineer. So if someone in the backend team decides to deprecate a field, just deprecating it in the schema will translate to the generated model. So it will go all the way from the backend developers, all the way to the front-end developer. And if you're an Android developer, you can enable the Kotlin compiler flags to just fail on warnings or fail on deprecation. And you can have your CI fail as soon as a field is deprecated in the schema. So this is very useful. You get notified by the changes in your schema almost instantly. Last few words about what's coming next and what is actually already there. So Apollo 2.0, Apollo Android 2.0 was released end of April. It does support multi-platform already with some limitations. So it supports multi-platform for code generation. So it generates multi-platform models. And also all the parsing is made using 100% multi-platform. So working on iOS and Android code. You can go check the repo. There is a multi-platform sample there, and that's already working. And today, the team is working on bringing multi-platform to the runtime. There's actually already some little things there. So there's a multi-platform HTTP API that works both on iOS and Android. But we'd also like to take this opportunity to refactor a little bit the runtime and make it more modular. So right now, if you're using Apollo Android, you might have noticed that the network and also the cache APIs are bundled really inside this big module that is Apollo Runtime. And we would like to make it easier to just abstract that or just start without the cache or just replacing your cache. So this is what's being worked on at the moment. So again, feel free to look at the repo, open issues, pull requests. Should have put a link to the repo there, but I will definitely share the slides so you have everything. And with that, I leave you with Lucy, and this was all for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Martin. Thank you very much. Martin's going to be taking questions in just a second. As we said at the start, he's going to be using the Slido platform, so you can find a link for that in the message part of your screen. So do post your questions there. I would just like to say thank you once again to our sponsor, Bluetooth, and to let you know that our next webinar will be next Tuesday, 26th of May at 3 o'clock at 1500. So we hope to see you there. Martin, thank you very much. Over to you for Q&A. I think there's already 8 or 9, maybe more questions on Slido, so you're going to be nice and busy.
All right. So, wait, I clicked the wrong link. I wanted to click this one. How do I switch back to question? Can you switch to question, maybe Lucy or Francesco? I think you will have to stop the poll, maybe. By the way, I'm super happy that people are curious about GraphQL. 52% haven't really looked into it yet, but since you were here today, it means you're curious about it. So I hope this talk gave you a good idea of how to start. So I can just take the question from there, I guess. Mutation query can only be called. I actually think that we did support report. So the question is, this question here, I don't know if you can see it. I think you can see it. A mutation query can only be called once. Also, when using RX bindings, there is no retry in RxJava. What is your strategy to solve this? So the answer is I can't remember the exact details for RxJava, but for coroutine flows, we definitely do support